Welcome back to the podcast. Today we've got Matthew Harrison back. Today we're focusing on AI use in legal documents. There's a lot of implications around what to do or not. So, for those that haven't joined on, we've had Matthew on before, some great conversation. So, look in the feed, Spotify or YouTube, wherever you're listening right now. And I'll let Matthew introduce himself now, please.
Hello, my name is Matthew Harrison. I'm an attorney. I'm the principal attorney at Harrison Law. I have to deal with and receive these questions on a regular basis about AI and how it impacts the legal sphere of things.
Absolutely. And since I also write as a journalist about AI a lot, I'm always surprised by how few companies still, they say around half, have an AI usage policy. So when we're talking about AI today, just to give a scope, are we talking about any sort of jurisdiction? Is this general advice for everyone? Is who should be listening to this podcast?
I would say it's general advice for anyone that is either in the legal sphere or a business that has to deal with legal issues and compliance. So if they have an internal organization that's addressing this issue or they're communicating with their outside counsel, they would know the limitations of AI and also be wary of also some of the issues that are going on with AI as well.
Yeah. And we say some of the issues, but more will probably come fairly soon. It will make the news. Hopefully, we'll know about when that happens. So, absolutely. So, is this for their where use within their organization or also in adopting anything that has AI in it? Like a lot of companies have gone through this like very strong process of adopting like SaaS tools, but have they reviewed since their SaaS
Yeah.
tool inevitably added AI to it?
Yeah, I think it goes into both areas when it comes to this, is that we can discuss not only the issues with AI within the legal sphere and when business interacts with AI, but also you are correct. There's a lot of businesses and law firms that just do not have a policy in place to address AI. And we're already seeing the ramifications of that lack of policy. And when it comes to information being disclosed that shouldn't be, internal communications that are now public, and it's becoming a significant issue as businesses interact within its own company, corporate organization, but also when it interacts with the outside counsel as well. So you have to be wary of both kind of areas when it comes to AI.
Absolutely. And a good rule of thumb is if you're not paying for it, your data is training it. And a lot of data y'all are using is proprietary. So, or
Yeah.
private and confidentiality, things like that. So let's dive into like issues with AI use in legal documents. What is appropriate or inappropriate?
I would say that what we are now experiencing is that we're seeing a lot of what I would refer to as improper AI generated documents. And that it's AI just in the complete drafting of these documents. And it is just doing far afield from what it should be in place, both from a legal perspective and a compliance perspective as well. And I'd say there's two categories where we're seeing a vast amount of AI generated documents that are causing problems. The first category we're seeing is in estate planning. And that would
Mhm.
be estate planning documents for individuals and families, but it would also include business succession planning documents. What is going to happen if somebody is disabled? What is going to happen after somebody has died? We're seeing a lot of misuse of AI documents when it comes to that. And almost actually a few times every month, when I consult with a business owner, unfortunately, I have a business owner bring in a document that they created themselves on AI to address an issue, which is not anywhere close to either legal or proper or the best way to do this when it comes to that. So we're seeing that category. The second major category we're seeing is improper generation of what I refer to as corporate documents. Those would be documents a corporation would generally use. That would be like contracts, anything from a basic purchase sale agreement to long-term uh, development of a relationship when it comes to a vendor or purchaser, real estate transaction documents. All those are being created by AI generated vehicles, usually not by utilizing an attorney as well. And they have a lot of corporate issues when it comes to the drafting of documents. And that's just something that we're seeing a lot of, as the AI is not even designed to do specifically what they believe it should do when it comes to drafting corporate documents. And so it's causing an immense amount of problems. And it is causing, now it's starting to integrate into litigation where now courts are recognizing the improper generation of documents, and how are they going to deal with something that's created by an AI drafter? And so that's something that the courts are dealing with as well.
Oh, wow. That'll be very interesting to see those opinions come out of those courts to see. Often courts are not that knowledgeable in technology, same with the regulatory bodies,
Yeah.
government. So it will be very interesting to see what precedence comes from that.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing already is that the courts will kind of decide this when it comes to the same kind of perspective it has if there's just a poor drafter. If someone just drafts a document either just stupidly or completely devoid of what should be in there, there's the courts are basically have determined that, well, you have the documents you have, and any blame for the wording of those documents can be placed on the drafter of those documents.
Mhm.
And that's what we're seeing here as well, is that the courts are not going to give any leeway or excuse if somebody comes in and says, well, I had an AI drafted. Usually the court's going to say, well, you're stuck with the document you drafted, even though it might be vastly wrong. And then lets the opposing side have a lot of ammunition to basically tear the argument apart. Enforcing a contract is based on the black and white terms of the contract. And if the improper terms are there, the court's just going to determine that there's not, it falls on the blame of the drafter, and it's going to go that way. That's my impression. They're not going to give any kind of leeway excuse for AI drafting.
Mhm. And just because we did talk about estate planning, I just have to plug your colleague, Alexandria Cohen, who we did a special episode specifically on estate planning. And of course, towards the end, we did touch on this because AI is not, there are templates. You can work with lawyers. There's a lot of stuff, but AI is not something you want to put your estate planning stuff into, both because you may be training it on private
Yeah.
information, but also what a risk. There should always be a human in the loop for things like this.
Absolutely. And I can tell when AI drafted a document within about 2 seconds of looking at the first page. When I have people come in with either documents they've already signed and executed, or now having to come in and have us fix it as well. And you are correct. When you put your information into AI, it is becomes open knowledge. It becomes part of the what I refer to as the public record. It is in AI, and AI and the company, whoever is behind AI, can utilize it for whatever purpose is necessary. And that discloses a lot of personal and private information. As one example I give is that, and this is something that Alexandra discovered, is that we had a past estate planning client who, several months after we had already completed the work, we were just looking at different AI platforms to type in our name. You know, like you kind of Google yourself, you AI yourself and see what comes up. And it was discovered that one of our past clients had basically uploaded our estate planning questionnaire into AI. And this estate planning questionnaire is private. It's protected by attorney-client privilege. We actually have security measures in place to prevent it from being disclosed. And they also included their own personal information throughout the document. So there were names, dates of births, addresses, other issues that caused problems. And then he prompted the AI to say, well, what question should I ask the attorney? But now that he did that, basically his estate planning questionnaire is public knowledge. Personal information is now public. And realistically, what he could have done is just asked us directly the questions and we would have answered them. And anyway, but now it's basically out in the universe, and there's not much we can do yet to claw it back. That's just basically he's now placed it out there, and unfortunately, he's going to have to deal with whatever identity theft issues are part of that as well.
Of course, yeah, these legal documents have a lot of identifying information on them.
Mhm.
So let's talk more about that attorney-client privilege. How does that work with a third-party research project AI?
When it comes to attorney-client privilege, and this is again case law that goes back for years, basically when there's communication directly between an attorney and the client, or the attorney's staff or the client's agents or staff, it is protected, which means that it's non-discoverable at all in litigation or any kind of action like that. But once you involve a third party, then it's no longer protected. That protection is waived. And in the old school, the example they utilize, if someone is talking in a public park between an attorney and a client, and someone's sitting in the park bench next to you and hears the conversation, it's no longer privileged. It basically, that person can testify whatever they want to. And if a court compels them to testify, they can testify to whatever the circumstances are. AI is not really that different. AI is that entity on the park bench that basically is overhearing your conversation. Once it becomes public like that, basically the attorney-client privilege is waived. You cannot ask for that protection. You cannot claw that information back in the majority of circumstances. It is now public information that can be used by an opposing side or your competitor for whatever reason it wants to.
And it may not even be accurate because we know AI has a lot of problems around hallucinations, etc.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it definitely can be inaccurate as well. I mean, I tell people that AI's primary purpose right now is to please.
yes.
It wants to interact with people, and so its ability to synthesize the information it receives is often based on that desire to please, and it gets into some pretty fanciful, imaginative conclusions or analysis in just how it listens to people. Just think if an individual you deal with always wants to please, but never really has the ability to be discreet or never has the ability to give you what's real. That's not the kind of person you want involved in your business or your legal avenues, but people do it all the time.
Absolutely. AI is very good at, we'll say BS. Uh,
Yeah.
but do you think it's useful in any way to prepare clients maybe to have a conversation that's like not personal, but like, I'm going to a lawyer today to discuss this general topic. What are some questions I should be prepared to answer or I should be able to ask? Is there any room for AI in law?
I really am wary, even if it's a general question like that, because theoretically or technically under attorney-client privilege, the fact someone is going to counsel or potentially represented by counsel is also privileged. And so I can't even tell individuals if I represent somebody or not until they give me permission to do so. And same with individuals is that if you're saying I'm going to an attorney and I want to ask these questions, there's already attorney-client information that is going to happen as part of that open AI that they're not, that under regular attorney-client privilege, they're not allowed to have. So I'd be extremely wary about that. I think that almost it's better is if you're doing either a general search online and saying what questions do I generally ask an attorney. That's better than AI because at least that way it's a little bit of anonymity. You're a little bit anonymous that way. Um, and instead of doing AI, where all of a sudden it has your name and what you inquired about, and then the answers that it's supplied to you as well. It's very potentially dangerous. And so I usually tell people, unless you're in a closed, protected, um, I always call it like almost like a China wall, which is a legal issue. We always talk about China wall system internally you don't provide that information to AI, especially if it's in the open field.
Is this something you're discussing with all your clients, even if like they didn't hire you for AI usage policy or things like that? Is this something you're like reminding clients, like, oh, also, do you have an AI usage policy? Do you have this set up? Because if you're like allowing everyone to experiment with the free versions, do you like this risk? Is this like an ongoing conversation and topic?
It's an ongoing conversation with my established clients. We usually will ask that question while we're discussing other business matters for them, is saying, do you have a policy in place? Is it in your employment handbook? Is it in your corporate handbook? Are you instructing your employees how to handle AI? And so we'll deal with that when it comes to the behavior internally. It has corporate wise and legal wise there. And when it comes to attorney to client, we've actually modified our representational letter because before we would have a description of, hey, attorney-client privilege is this, don't talk to other people. And now we've expanded this to not only don't talk to other people, this is the issue when it comes to AI and the systems there. Don't talk to magical computer person either, because again, it's an entity and it's just like, talking to your neighbor about your problems. And the neighbor's gonna, whether they want to or not, have to testify against you. And so that's just something that we're even doing that from an instruction standpoint when we are out of the gate starting to represent somebody for the first time. Because I think they don't even consciously, it triggers because they don't really think of it that way unless you tell them.
And the younger your staff is, the more automatic it is for them to just use ChatGPT, et cetera, and
Yeah,
you gotta control it.
and that's something that I tell people as well. You have to, especially younger generations, you have to directly prohibit them from utilizing that. And a lot of times the response is, well, why? And then you have to almost have an educational experience, which is a shock to a lot of them. I think some colleges are getting, and universities are getting better at that. When it comes to showing how AI is not going to give you the information you need, but you almost have to have a direct line reasoning why you can't utilize it at all. You, in fact, shouldn't even have it on your computers in the office. Don't download it onto your systems.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're being quite suspicious of AI. We won't say anti for this purpose of this call, but
Yeah.
also in general, because I see it a lot even in tech. We saw it very quick, very early on with Samsung that they eventually at some point just shut down their AI because they realized that, yeah, it's very helpful for like testing code and things, but they had put proprietary code in the public system to test the code,
Yeah.
which thus trains for everyone else that code on it, which could
Yeah.
also flip the other side and have weaknesses and things. So we see it in everything. But are there areas where AI is useful in the legal business right now?
I would say areas that I am okay with AI being utilized, and again, I will emphasize not the open systems, but something where you can find AI through established companies that have these, is that the ability for AI to summarize a document is really good. I mean, if you have a multi-page document and you need to have it kind of give a summarized version of it, I think that AI does a decent job when it comes to that. With the understanding is once you have that summary, you're going to have to dive deeper into the nuances and figure it out on your own. AI will give you what I refer to as that 30,000-foot view of something. And then you better go down into the details when it comes to the analysis. But again, it gives you that situation. I think that in that way it's good. I think AI and the ability for it to translate language is fairly good. And when we were able to utilize it for dictation purposes and for conversations, when I have individuals or clients or whatever I'm speaking with throughout the world, yeah, I think that that's very useful there. Again, by a kind of a closed system, are you actually purchasing something that guarantees that protection? Both in, and I always tell people it's sending and receiving and at rest. You have to have all three in place. I think that way it's really good as well. And from a law firm perspective, I think that the established law firm entities are developing AI systems that are closed within your corporate structure. They basically are developing those what, China walls to help protect that information. So typically in the United States, the go-to providers, which is like LexisNexis, Westlaw, Clio, all are kind of major providers for legal services. They are developing items and services that do allow for the integration of AI. But again, that causes that's just something that's in the infancy stages. I don't think is perfected yet. I kind of go through test runs with them, and it's not to the point in time where I'm comfortable yet, but I think they're getting there. I think within a couple of years they'll get to that point in time.
Absolutely. And doing it in a closed circuit within your organization just makes it more likely to be accurate.
Yeah, I agree with that. Is that it's they're getting to the point in time where they're teaching it through the documentation that an attorney typically would be taught. And so a lot of them are starting to integrate case law and other analysis in it. And for an example, Westlaw and LexisNexis have human beings who review and evaluate the cases and put in the key summaries and the key case sites and other things like that. But now teaching AI to go through those summaries and start to synthesize information becomes a lot easier because, again, the human analysis has already occurred. It's not feeling it has to come up with something. The desire to please isn't there. I mean, it's it becomes a pathological liar if you have that overwhelming desire to please. So I think that's better. And again, I tell my staff, and especially my younger staff, is I think eventually it's going to get to the point in time where we have a comfort level with it. But the nuances, the deep analysis, the exception to the exception rules,
Mhm.
that's something where an attorney still is going to need to get into that document and look for those options.
And by hiring an attorney to understand that this is their specialization, but
Yeah,
also it just saves you money in the long term based on any sort
it
of
does.
risk or fines, or AI usage is highly regulated if you're working with the EU now, and you have to trace everything and auditability. So it's all very important. Is there anything else I
Yes.
should be asking you about, Matthew? On this?
Well, I think that and how you stated towards the end, this is where I think law firms still have an important place in this whole discussion. An attorney is not going to go away. And I don't feel that there's any artificial intelligence that's going to replace the analysis that most attorneys do. And so I think that the fear that AI will all of a sudden diminish law firms, I don't think is the situation. You're still going to need to have an attorney that goes through and synthesizes the arguments and other things like that. I can tell if a document is generated by AI when I receive it from litigation. So can a judge, and and judges are not going to let this pass. And it's going to be a tool, just like your computer research is a tool, just like paralegal support's a tool. But all of a sudden, are we going to go away? Absolutely not. And I think the thing item that you'll have to think of as well is that my issue when I see a poorly drafted estate plan
Mhm.
and they think they saved money by doing it this way, I think to myself, well, eventually they're going to die, and some attorney's going to make about $30,000 to $50,000 because now we're in a state and we're in probate, and you saved a couple $1,000s up front, yeah, but guess what? Your state's going to spend five figures plus to fix it, and the cost benefit is not there. And so people need to think of it's not shortcuts and fast and cheap. You usually get what you pay for if it's fast and cheap. That's something to keep in mind.
What about you talked about the young lawyers coming on? I talk to like people that are like very interested in law here. Of course, it happens like 4 years. I'm in London, so it happens like 4 years younger than the US, where you go through university, then law school. But I'm always like take some AI, take a Python course, take some classes that get you like knowledgeable about AI, because I think that's an emerging law that is fascinating. And you're understanding you can't avoid AI. You have to engage with it, especially if you're going to be potentially ruling against it, but in a safe way and understanding it. Is this something you're seeing emerging? This like AI native lawyer that like understands AI because that's how they were learning?
I think that I hope so. I think it is evolving that way, where attorneys are looking at less as a shortcut or a fast and cheap way to find out analysis, that eventually attorneys are going to have that experience to be able to develop certain questions and items that actually help in the process. A lot of results, and it was this way even with computer aided research. A lot of the results or answers that you received are going to be based on the questions that you ask. And I think that someone who has a knowledge of AI and how the should questions be framed is going to make their respective lives a lot easier when they ask those questions.
Mhm.
And I also think that with that knowledge, they'll be better able to see through the BS as the, that the AI will give and know what's right or wrong. I mean, there's already been cases where attorneys have been sanctioned because they use false arguments generated by AI research. And they've lost cases already when it comes to that. And we've done experiments in office already. And I tell this to the younger attorneys in my office all the time. I had one of my younger attorneys have an assignment to do a demand letter. And out of curiosity on her own computer outside of, the thing, she just plugged in some very generic information, not attorney-client privileged information into an AI system to see what kind of demand letter it would generate. And basically, it generated out a demand letter that it looked nice. It had a lot of good words. It advocated for the position that she wanted it to advocate for. But the case law was false. The citations were incorrect. They didn't even exist. They were false. And at the end of the day, is they didn't know the exceptions to the rule, which made it that it didn't help at all. Eventually, you're going to want to have an AI system that's going to be able to tell you you're wrong.
Mhm.
And that's going to be an important part of, I think, the growth if it gets to that point. I haven't seen anything yet that does that. Is a lot of times you want a system that is able to say, okay, with the information I have, I think that your premise is wrong and this is why. And that way, I think that's the growth. A lot of people uh, get a little bit they get a little bit too confident in their own knowledge,
Mhm.
and with that, I think it causes problems. But I'd like to see AI get to that stage where it says, okay, I understand what you're advocating for, but let me give you the flip side, and let me tell you what I think is going to be the issues. AI is not there yet. I think it's going to be a few years before that's there.
Yeah, it was all trained on yes people, and now it needs to
Yeah.
be trained on the creative, critical thinking of devil's advocate. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It has to become a devil's advocate because that's part of litigation. And as I tell my clients, is that I'm going to tell you what's good or bad. I'm going to tell you both. And I'm going to tell you where the arguments are great. I'm going to tell you where the arguments are horrible, so that you at least have an expectation of where we're going. And that's so important when it comes to legal analysis. And I'll have clients joke with me and say, I had this brilliant idea until I spoke with you. And then you put the wet blanket on my fire of possibility. I go, well, that's part of my job. And I'd rather have you know all the parameters so you can make an informed decision. And that's what attorneys will need to do as well. We're going to need to make an informed analysis to the benefit of our clients. And if we don't, or we take a lazy way out intellectually um, by utilizing improper AI, those results are going to happen.
And then just because IR Global is a network, and often a lot of our lawyers in our network are partnering across jurisdiction or across, maybe it's not just lawyers, but financial advisors, people like that. Do you have a policy or a communication standard for your partners about their use of AI?
I I generally have thought about creating one. I have not yet. I'll tell you where my concerns are. I think that direct communication is still protected by attorney-client privilege, but I have little to no control of what happens to that communication once it gets to that receiver of it. And I have very difficult time enforcing what that receiver does as well. Now, hopefully, with regulations, and as you said, the European Union and other countries are starting to get this way. I think I come under the belief that okay, if you're following in compliance with regulation, we're going to be okay. But
Mhm.
just as if I have a client or a counsel who's not complying with environmental regulation, they can get themselves into trouble, just like they can when it comes to AI regulation. I, at least on my end, always put in the caveats when I send communications that this is attorney-client privileged information and should be used for that purposes. That at least I think protects my firm if an issue happens at least. But again, that's just something I'm trying to develop a format to utilize for my partners overseas that allows for that. Um, very kind of nicely but firmly saying you better be doing it this way.
Mhm. If people, I imagine this actually leads to more questions that are more specific to organizations, especially businesses, thinking about, oh, bleep, we did that. What do we do now? If they want to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Best way is to contact us via either a website or also our phone number and information that I know that is supplied as part of this. I'd be happy to talk with somebody. I think the main issue when I have those kind of, oh crap, what have I done?
Yeah.
What have I done? Discussions with people is that kind of like an alcoholic, number one, we're going to stop drinking. And then number two, and which means we're going to stop use of AI. And then number two, we're going to set up the parameters going forward. So we're changing their corporate policy. And then number three, we're giving them some advice, usually referring them to professionals how to basically wall off the company. But if you're using, the chat GPTs of the world, I'm never going to advise a company to do that. It's just better to invest in some of the systems that are in place. For the United States, again, I talked about legally from a business perspective. I think Adobe is getting there. There's other kind of business-centered ones that I think make a lot of sense for people. But that's going to be my recommendation. We're going to stop. We're going to stop drinking. Number two, we're going to fix what's happened, and number three, we're changing the policy.
So important. And I really consistently recommend that AI policies need to exist in organizations across and be well communicated with everyone. It's something to be excited about. A lot of people are interested. A lot of other people are really afraid for their jobs about it. You can't avoid talking about it, but you also need to put guidelines and barriers around everything. Thank
And,
you. Yeah.
And I think that's really important. When people are fearful of employment, think of yourself as the contrarian. Think of yourself, how are you going to develop something where you can, even if AI is in place, can be that kind of voice of reason, that devil's advocate. I think in that way, a lot of that fear can go away as well. Just don't follow that trend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and good luck to everyone on your AI journey. A lot of people think they're experts in it, but we are very much at the beginning.